All right, so the bell ringer, of course, we went back over what you learned about the Renaissance or the DBQ article. And the Renaissance, we had just talked about really the artistic part that was happening in Italy. And so today we'll talk about humanism, which mostly happened in the Northern Renaissance. So, humanism was about the study of the development of humans, at least socially and academically. And many of the humanists took great heart in ancient writings that came from Athens and Rome. A lot of what the humanists did, especially in the North, was concentrate on reform. And quite a few humanists were known as Christian humanists because they wanted to encourage changing the church. Now, no one was interested in splitting off and creating a new church. That wouldn't happen until the Reformation. They just wanted to try to make the church better. One of the people who ended up doing that was Erasmus, which is spelled Erasmus. He thought that interfaith or faith of individuals was important, and he also believed that criticism shouldn't be heavy-handed. It should be through things like satire so people can laugh about it and not become too radical. Sir Thomas More took the idea of reform a little bit further. He looked at how we civically organize society, so governance. He wrote a book called Utopia, where property was, of course, considered the most important thing. It was the most significant thing for a state, and that the people safeguarded property together in order to prevent injustice. And of course, he would be an incredibly important part of the royal court of England. Thomas More himself could also be critical of the church, but once again, he didn't believe in splitting off and forming a new one. And he actually served as an advisor to Henry VIII, and we'll talk more about that later. And when Henry VIII wanted to split off from the church, Thomas More, of course, was opposed to that. He ended up being executed. So once again, the humanists believed in reforming. They didn't necessarily believe in breaking off and starting something new. But reforming and improving things also led to other innovations. The humanist movement helped inspire William Shakespeare, for instance. It's considered one of the most major contributors to literature and art within England, especially during the time of Queen Elizabeth later on. And it also led to invention. Gutenberg invented the printing press. And this was mostly meant to help further the idea of Christian humanists because he wanted to mass produce the Bible so that way each person could have their own individual copy and read it and study it and come to their own conclusions. But of course, the printing press ended up being used for a lot more than that and then spread wildly throughout Europe, as we saw on the map we looked at earlier. The humanist movement is often overshadowed by the artistic part that happens in Italy, but humanism will help inspire later movements to occur, like the Enlightenment in the 1600s. Because the Enlightenment and later on the Scientific Revolution expanded upon these ideas of trying to look at our old ways of thinking about things and try to encourage reform. So humanism would have an impact here, but more of that would also happen later on. And obviously the Reformation, which you learned about in middle school, that would also be influenced by the humanists. Many of the people, the most significant people in the Reformation, like Martin Luther, at first, he also did not want to split off and form a different church. He just wanted the Catholic Church to reform. But by the time the Reformation occurred, of course, they had discovered that that was futile, and so eventually other churches would be formed. Does anybody have any questions about any of this? Anything at all? Okay, so that's all of the notes for unit number 1. And this, as long as you have your comments and questions in the margin on the left-hand side, you can go ahead and submit that. Don't forget also the chapter 1 and chapter 2. You have your pages there to summarize and to add those if you haven't already. And then, of course, the quizzes you can take twice. And don't forget I added that other video that you can just put down, type some points down from on the EI chart. It is a review put forward by the College Board for the first unit about the Renaissance.